Okay. So if you are able to see my screen, give me a confirmation on the chat box, and then I'll start the session. Okay. Thank you so much, Naresh, and thank you so much, Venkata. Okay. So let us proceed and let us, quickly complete the exercise that we were doing, before this break. So so I just quickly, if you remember, we did a dispatcher and we did a performer, and also we created a queue. So right now there is nothing in the queue. So if you see the view transaction, so the queue is entirely empty. And if you see over here, so we have created a dispatcher and the performer model. And in the dispatcher, we have used the add queue item. And in the add queue item, so I just added, all the remaining form fields, that is the role in the company, address, email, and the phone number with respect to the corresponding rows in the Excel sheet. Okay, so let us quickly upload these values into the orchestrator queue. So let me run this file. So let us do a quick refresh here, and you can see the values, are being added, and it's done. Let me do a quick final refresh, and we have 110. So we have all the 10 records added into the queue. Now let us go ahead and look at the performer once again. So what we have done is we have used a flowchart, and we're getting the transaction item, and over here we are passing the queue name. So the queue name is form data. Uh, If you hear background noise from you, so if anybody is still on, you know, no voice, please mute yourself. I'll. Okay. So we have a get transaction item activity, and in the get transaction activity, we pass the queue name, and here we are getting the queue item in a variable called as transaction item, and we are checking if the transaction item is not nothing. If not, then we'll end the transaction, or if it consists of something, then we are using the sequence and we are filling in all the form. So here I have filled for the rest of the fields. So earlier we did for the 3 columns. So I completed for role in the company, address, email, and the phone number. So I'll just repeat once again, what exactly is the text that you need to type. So it's the transaction item variable that we created. So it's transaction item dot the specific content, and in the specific content you need to specify the argument value that you've created. So everything is done. All thing is done. Now we need to use one more activity over here. So it's again a queue activity over here. So over here we'll use the queue activity, and the activity name is called as set transaction status. So we'll drag and drop the set transaction status at the very end. As in, if everything is done, I'll say set the transaction. I'll say over here. Now, setting a transaction means if the queue was successful or not. So in our case, if all the values have been entered successfully, so in our case, what I'll do is in the set transaction over here, you have the status. So here, either you can put a failed transaction or you can put a successful transaction. So I'll say it's a successful transaction. That's it. So my queue will be updated from new, then it would be in progress. And once the progress is completed, the status would be set to completed, or that is successful. That's it. Now let us run this program, and let me see what is the purpose of it. So before that, yes or any question?
Transaction item to be specified.
Yeah. So we need to also specify the transaction item here. So if you can see for which particular queue item, as in, so for example, you're working with a particular queue item is the first row. So that transaction item has to be set to be successful or the failed over here. So we'll pass the transaction item variable. Okay. So that's it. So done. Now you can also build a try catch logic over here. Saying if your transaction fails, then you can put the status as fail. Or if a transaction is always success, you can put the transaction as success. So it's depending upon the logic how you want to build it. But right as of now, I'll say everything here because I know everything will work fine because there is no error in the data. So if everything works fine, it will be success. But in case of very complex examples where if the data is inconsistent, let's say for example there is an integer field but your data is a string field. that will cause you an error. So in that case, what you can do is you can set the transaction, or you can set the status of the queue saying failed, and you can say the reason as whether it's a business exception, or whether it's a application exceptions. You can see we have two options: business exceptions or application exceptions. So it's up to you, whatever you can call them, and then you can build a very robust logic so that irrespective of what is the queue element, it's fine, your data will be updated accordingly. Now let us go ahead and run this performer. So I'll just click, I'll say run the file. So now we should see where, okay, so the bot has started executing fine, and you can see the values, are being updated over here in the form. So now this is done for the first record. Now the same goes for the 10 record. So let this bot complete for that time. I'll, address any of, so my chat window is still open. So people want to post a questions here, please post a question. I'll be able to help that. So till that time, people are asking any questions. Let me give a brief idea more about queues. How to we exactly use it. So, or when is the status, when you can set the status to failed, or so as I said, if integer conversion is not happening, so if integer conversion is happening, you can set the status of the queue to be failed. Later what you can do is you can revoke the queue, so you can convert the queue status, and then you can revoke the queue status, and then you can work on again with the same status. Now the queue has various queue status. So some of the queue status are success, retired, faulted, in progress, pause, stop. So I'll suggest you to refer to the or UiPath docs. So in the UiPath doc, you can read about all the status that the queue has, and each and every status represent a particular symbol, or represent a particular emphasis on the particular thing. So depending upon the status of the queue, you can even change your code. You can even change the status of your code. You have a history blog over here where you can change the status of the queue. So I hope the queue example is set. The agenda is set perfectly fine. How to use queue, when to use queue, and what is the main benefit of using queue. Now, okay, so we see over here the execution has completed. Now let us go back to the UiPath orchestrator. As you can see, everything is new over here. Let me do a quick refresh here, and you can see everything has been successful. And then each and every queue item was picked up, and each and every queue item was successfully been completed. So you can see over here, as in what time it started, what time it ended. So you can easily see here it started at around 12:09:03 and it ended around 12:09:01. So it took that much of seconds for it to execute, and which robot was executing it. So in our case, we had only one robot, Robo1. So it says the Robo1 was executing it. And if in case you have an exception, so your exceptions would be logged here, saying an application exception or a business exception. So the exceptions will be thrown here. You can also check the details, as in these were the queue items which we have used, and you can see here the each and individual status that it was successful, and so on. So this is all about queues. So I hope the concepts of queue is understood to everyone. So if you have any doubt, please post your questions. If not, give me a thumbs up over here in the chat box so that I can proceed ahead with the second topic of the day. Okay, I'm waiting for some confirmation in the chat box to proceed further. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so let us move on to the the last topic. So the training, and you'll be attending the training for the past 1 week, and it's the end of the training, and we have a very unique, very cool function, a very unique topic, I'll say. It's the RE framework. So let me just quickly open up the framework. So you can go here, and from here you can choose a template. So we have a number of templates here. One of a template, or I'll say one of a very first template. So when we started designing it, so we designed the very first template as the Robotic Enterprise Framework template, or we call it as REF, Robotic Enterprise Framework. That is the name. So let me go ahead and create a Robotic Enterprise Framework. There you go. So let me give a name to it. So I'll say this is ref, sorry for that. So I'll say ref demo. Okay, sorry for the typo. Okay, and let me go ahead and click create. Okay, so the project has been successfully created, and the moment you open up the main file, that is the main.xaml file, over here you can see a lot of stuff is already there. You don't have to do anything. A lot of stuff is already been there. Now let us try and as in what is RE framework? Why do we use framework, or what is the hype about RE framework all about? So first, let's understand, what is the framework. As I assume most of you would have done many of the programming language. So, for example, when I was doing Java, so we had a framework. So you might be aware of it. So you have Hibernate framework, you have Spring framework. So it's nothing but a kind of a framework which where most of the things are built up. You just need to fill in the blanks. So the setup is already done. You need to just put things into the places, and the program will absolutely run perfectly fine. So the same goes with the RE framework in our case. So we have created a framework, and many of the developers use this framework to get started on a very big project. So ideally, when you're building a highly intense project which involves a lot of complications and all, so we prefer or we suggest to use the RE framework because it has a lot of mechanism it can handle. As in, it can handle the exceptions, it can handle retry, every value here and there, if this goes wrong, if that goes wrong. So everything has been handled inside this framework. Everything is bundled together. All you have to do is you have to put everything into correct places, and this bot will run absolutely fine. Now speaking about the, let me give you a brief an introduction about what are all this design diagram that you see here. So you can see a lot of things going from here and there and here. So let me just quickly give you a very brief understanding about what everything is all about. And it's very, see, there is nothing to as such code here in RE framework because everything is done for you. You have to just fill in the blanks. But all you have to do is you'll have to understand what is this, when I'm going to use this, and how am I going to use this. If you understand this very clearly, then this is just a magic to you. You can implement any of a project inside using a RE framework. Okay, so as you can see over here, so the RE framework is implemented as a state machine workflow, which is a kind of a workflow that defines the state that represents a particular circumstances of the execution. It's like defining on a certain condition, the execution can transition from one state to another, or it represents the different steps of action. So if you see here, state machine was like already taken in your training, I think so 1 or 2 days before. So RE framework is built on the completely on the state machines. So if you see here, these are all the states available over here. And we have 4 types of states available in this RE framework. So the first state is the initialization state. We have get transaction state. Then we have the process transaction state, and then at the last we have the end transaction state. Now let me tell you about each one of you in a brief. So the initialization, so what basically does it? It reads the configuration files and initialize the application used in the process. It's like if the all initialization is successful, the execution moves to the get transaction state. In case it's a failure, it moves to the end process transaction. So as you can see over here, if this state machine is successfully executed, it goes to the get transaction data, or it moves to the end process if there is an error. Or if a system exception occurs during the processing of a transaction, the framework attempts to recover from the error by closing all the applications used and returning to the initialization state so that the application can be initialized again. Now let's talk about the second state, that is the get transaction state. It gets the next transaction to be processed. If there is no data to be processed or there is no occur, there is no error occurring, the execution goes to the end process state. If a new transaction is successfully retrieved, it is processed in the process transaction state. As you said, transaction is it's all about state machines over here. So if it gets a transaction, as in the queues, if it gets the value from the queues, well and fine, it goes to the process transaction. If not, no data, end the process. As simple as this.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am. Hello. Okay, so I see Anita's and Hindu microphone is on. If you have any question, please speak, or else you can mute yourself. Okay, so let us proceed further. So the next state is the process transaction state. So it processes a single transaction. The result of this processing can be success, it can be a business exception, or it can be a system exception. In case if it's a system exception, what happens is, sorry, if in case it's a system exception, the processing of the current transaction can automatically be retried. If it is a business exception, the transaction is skipped, and the framework tries to retrieve a new transaction from the get transaction data. The execution also returns the get transaction data state to retrieve a new state if the processing of the current state is successful. So if you see here, the process transaction has three and outputs in it. If it is success, it goes back to the get transaction and takes the new transaction and come back for processing. If you encounter a business exception, that means the queue will be marked as failed, status will be marked as fail, and then again it goes for the next queue item and it takes the value from the queue item. If in case there is a system exception, say for example, as I said, internet is gone or the application is closed, then it goes back again to the initialization state and then it starts from the beginning. And if it starts from the beginning, that does not mean that the queue item will start again. The leftover queue items will be processed again from here. So this is where the queue management exactly happens in the RE framework. And at the last, you have the end process state. So it is used for finalizing the process and closing all the application used. So it's a very good practice, if when you're building an automation and you're working with n number of applications, so make sure that if your automation is completed successfully, you need to close all your application that has been opened up. So that code will go here in the end process state. So now let us look at individually, as in what is each state responsible for doing it. Let me open the first state, that is the initialization state. So let me click on that. You can see the code that is already been written in the initialization state. Now if you see over here, the very first application or the very first program that is called, or the very first workflow that is called, is init all settings. And if you see here, under this framework folder, you have all the workflows built in. So it's a kind of a template where some of the workflows have already built in. They have a particular name, and each of these workflow is responsible to do a particular job. So you can use this workflow and you can get your job done. Now let me only speak about what are all the workflows there, and later I'll talk about each and every workflow, what are they responsible to do it. So over here in the initialization state, you have three workflows. So the first workflow is the init all setting, and then the second workflow is kill all process. Here you can see we are calling the second workflow kill all process, and then we have the last workflow, that is init all applications. So I'll request each one of you to please make a note of it, because it's very important to understand what is there in RE framework, how it works. I'll repeat again. So in the initialization state, we have three workflows. The very first workflow is init all setting. The second is kill all processes. And the third one is init all application. So these are the three XML file which is called inside the initialization state. Now, let us go back to the second state, that is the get transaction state. Now, in the get transaction state, there is only one workflow that is called, and the name of the workflow is get transaction data. I'll repeat again. In the get transaction data state machine, there is only one workflow called, the workflow is get transaction data. Sorry. Now let us go ahead to the next, that is the process. Now in this process, you can see there is only one workflow called, that is process.xaml. But this process.xaml can be responsible, to call multiple workflows which is there in it. So I'll let you know in while what are the workflows that can be called over here. Now let's move on to the very last workflow, that is the end process. So in the end process, we have an workflow which says close all application, and we also have an application workflow which is kill all processes. So we have two workflows over here. The very first workflow is close all application. The name is very clear. You might have got the feeling of what is your workflow responsible to do. So this is responsible to close all the application. And also we have one more workflow which is called as kill all processes. So this is responsible to, forcefully kill all the processes that has been opened up. So that was all about, what are the processes available or what are the workflows, available over here given. Now, a very important thing to understand is in this workflow, what are all the variables available and what is the job responsible for all the variables over here. So over here you can see there are a couple of, no, not couple of, there is a lot of variables which has already been created, and there is also an argument which is already created. So now you need to understand what is the job of all these variables. You are free to create, more variables as per your need, but make sure that, you do not create a variable which is already present, as in the need of the variable. So most of the variable need will be sought through the variable that is already been available. If you want, you are free to create n number of variables as per your programming need and use it. But it's first you have to understand, what is the name and what is the use of the variables that has already been defined in the RE framework. So the first variable in our case is the transaction item. If you recall, we did the queue example, right? So the transaction item is responsible for getting the queue items. Now, since RE framework is so advanced, you can also remove the queue item, and instead of a queue, you can replace it with a data table variable. I hope this is making sense. You can replace it with a collection data table variable. So that even if you have no access to orchestrator, still you can use your RE framework, that is getting the queue item and replacing it with the data table. Data table also is going to act as the same way as the queue item over here. Now, the next two set of variables are system exception and business exception. System exception is used during the transition between a state to represent other exceptions which are apart from the business exceptions. So for example, if you have defined an exception which falls, say for example, the object is not initialized, or you are not able to get a null reference, or array out of bound exception. So those are all the system exceptions. So those kind of exceptions should be handled by this variable. So I'll suggest you not to create another variable, make use of the same variable for system exception. And then you have a business exception variable. So business exception variable is used for creating a business exception that you have. As I said earlier, when you are filling up a web form, Yeah, and in that web form, the data has to be, entered as a integer value, but your data that you have is a string value. Now that does not matter. Your program is working fine, but the data in the application is getting mismatched. So in that case, that does not belong to an application error or a system error. It is a business error, as in the business data is not correct. So you will mark this as a business error, and then you will proceed further. So that's the difference between the two of them. Now then we have the transaction number. Now transaction number is basically, an integer variable where, you can keep a sequential counter of all the transaction item you have. Let's say for example, you're processing one first queue item, the transaction number will start the counting as one transaction item done, two second transaction item done, third transaction item done, so on and so on. So it also keeps a numbering of all the transactions that you have used. And then we have a config variable, a very important variable. It's of the type dictionary, and the key is of string, and the value is of the type object. Now, why do we use a config variable over here is we have a file. So if you see here, under the data, we have a file called as config.xlx. Let me open this Excel file. Now I'll tell you what is this Excel file responsible to do. Okay. So if you see, this Excel file has three worksheet in it. It has settings, it has constants, and it also has assets. Now, what are they responsible to do? As I said earlier, say for example, the code is already in published development in the production, and there is some changes needed over here. Then it's very painful, to get the code back into development, make the changes and publish again. And then again the customer says, no, I want to change this. So it's going to be a cycle again. Every time thing is going to be the same. It goes ahead, and this is not a good practice of a development. So what we will do is we will put all these variables that we have, as in things which are going to change, which are not going to change, into this Excel sheet. Even the orchestrator name. Say for example, today I have an orchestrator. So by default, the orchestrator name is process ABCQ. Now, say for example, tomorrow I change the orchestrator name. Sorry, I change the queue name in the orchestrator. If you change the queue name, then obviously in the code also you need to change the queue name, right? Now, since you're using this configuration file, what you can do is you can directly update this Excel sheet, and that's it. Because the RE framework is going to fetch values from the Excel sheet first, and then it is going to process. So all you have to do is you have to just change the queue name here. That's it. Let's say for example, I'll say the queue name is ABC. Perfect, done. There is no need to touch the code at all, because the RE framework is going to read data from the config file first, and then it is going to use the config file and then proceed further. So in the same way, you can define constants here, as in, any variables that you have. Here you can see is the max retry number. So if in the orchestrator you do not define how many time in the retry, you can proceed starting over here. You can say this is where you need to define. You can define all your variables here. You can use the orchestrator assets here. This can also be done. So everything can be defined here. So you use the asset here. Say for example, tomorrow the asset name is getting changed in the orchestrator. You don't need to change your code. You need to just update it over here in this config file, and then it will work perfectly fine. So it is giving you the flexibility of making loosely coupled application, wherein it's not necessary to change the code every time. Develop your code in such a manner that all the variables that are going to change, put it into this config file. And later, if the value is really going to change, it's okay. Open the config file, update the value into the config file, and then you're done. There is no need to, update your code at all. So I'll let you know how to use this config file. I'll show you the code where orchestrator really reads values from this config file. So let me close this config file for now. Don't save that value. Okay. So let's proceed further. And the next is the retry number, as in how many times you want to retry the particular transaction item. You can see over there. And then we have a couple of transaction field items. So it's optional to use, but you can use it for your transaction. So it basically includes the information about your transaction item. So if you want to store any more information about the transaction item, you can use these variables, the field one and the field two. Apart from that, you also have the transaction ID and the transaction data. So it is used to, logging your ID for each unique references that you have, and the transaction data is used to store the data in a data table. So for example, if you have retrieve the value from a spreadsheet, so those values can be stored into a transaction data, because the value is the variable type is a data table variable. Okay, so these are all the important the variables that you need to absolutely understand what this is variable and what are they going to work with. Now let us go ahead and talk about some of the workflows that we have. I mean, what is this workflows responsible to do and how do we use this? And start with the initialization workflow. And in this initialization state machines, let us start with the very first workflow, that is init all settings. Now, let me open this work. This is the workflow which I'm talking about. And this workflow, you can see it has bit of code already written to you. So I'll tell you what exactly is the purpose of this code. So basically, this initializes populates and outputs a configuration dictionary file. That is the config file that we created. So what it basically does is it reads the config file, the Excel file, and it also reads the assets, and then it stores it into a variable. So if you clearly see over here, so we are just specifying, creating a dictionary argument and of type string and object, and then here we are reading. So if you see the argument value over here, you can see here. So okay, so over here we are specifying, where is the Excel file. So the Excel file is inside data in the config file, and from the Excel file, I'm telling what to read. So read only the settings and read only the constant page. We are not reading the assets from here, because assets, we are directly reading it from the orchestrator. If in case you are providing the asset in the Excel page, then you'll have to mention another column here, or you can directly specify the asset worksheet here. So proceeding further over here, you can see we are using a for each loop to loop across all the spreadsheet, and we are storing all the values inside the config variables. And lastly, over here, we are also using the asset values. So reading the asset value, if in case there is an asset, we specify the asset, or if there is no asset, we just log the message saying there was no asset, or asset recovery from the orchestrator failed. So this init all setting is only responsible to get the initialization started up, that is reading the data from the config file and reading the asset values from the orchestrator. So now let us go ahead and see the next process, next workflow that we have. The next workflow is the kill all process workflow. So let me open up this workflow, and as you can see, this workflow is pretty empty. It's just a message saying killing process ... as in killing process starts. Now, what you need to do is, before the actual automation starts, you need to close all the applications that is there. Say for example, in our case, we did the previous example, right, where we said we need to fetch the value from the Excel sheet and put it inside the Excel workbook in the web page. So if the Excel sheet is open, the read range activity gives you an error. So you can close all these application here, as in whatever application that you are going to need. If the applications are open in the background, you can put a kill process activity here, and then close each and every process activity application that you have. And then it's like starting from the scratch. Every application is closed. Now we'll start again. So this is responsible for closing everything. After that, you see we have an workflow which is init all application. Now here, what you need to do is you need to start applications that you will need. Say for example, you have to use open application, or over here you'll use the open browser activity, or let's say for example, you have to call a code where it logins into the website. Say for example, you have to log in into a website, and after into you have to do a lot of processing in. You have to insert values, process values, and all. So your actual automation is in that website, you need to enter values into it. So login into the web actual process. So that part can be taken care here in Initol application. So opening the browser, login into the website, that part can be done here. I hope this is I'm making sense over here. Why do we use Initol applications? So it's like whatever application you're going to use, start this application. If that application has login into it and do it here in this workflow itself. Do not keep it for another workflow to start because initialization is responsible to do this thing. That's it. So we're done with the state machine, that is initialization state machines. Now let us go ahead and open up the state machine, that is the get transaction state machine. Now, what are we responsible to do over here? So over here, if you see, we have a workflow that is get transaction data. Let me open the get transaction data and I'll tell you what we are supposed to do over here. So if you see over here in the get transaction, we are using the get transaction item. So if you remember, it's the queue activity that we are using. So it's like taking or fetching a value from the queue. And if you see over here, we're not specifying the orchestrator value over here at all, because those values will be fetched from the Excel sheet. So if I open the Excel sheet over here, and you can see here what is the name. Here is the actual value, but what are we referencing it with? We're referencing it with queue orchestrator name. And if you come back here, you can see here in underscore config and then the orchestrator queue name. So whatever you keep here, the queue name, that queue name will be, actually working here, and then you will get the transaction from here. So you see how loosely coupled your application is going to be now. So you don't need to bother about changes. All you have to do is update the changes into the Excel file, and then you're good to go. Your application is good to go to run anytime, any modification is there. You'll say, okay, I'll do it. I have the Excel sheet. Now I can do the modification very easily. So over here, you do the get the queue transaction and you store it in a variable called as out transaction item. So out transaction item, is basically responsible to store the queue value that is being fetched from the orchestrator. Now, as I said earlier, RE framework is not only responsible to work from the orchestrator queue, right? So you can change the transaction to data table. You can fetch the values from any APIs, or you can also fetch values from database or data table, or you can always use a spreadsheet. And Excel, in the sense, it's again going to be a data table itself. So you can fetch values from the data table also. So it's not only orchestrator queues can work as a transaction data. It can be a data table. It can be fetching values from APIs or any other thing that you can put over here in place of queue. Now, this is the only one workflow over here, as I said earlier. Let's head back to the next state, that is the process transaction state. Now, this is where, all the magic is going to happen. So if you see here, we have only one workflow, that is process.xaml file. If I open this workflow, you can see nothing. It's a very blank sequence because it's a process that you have to build it. But the framework is not going to build it for you, right? Every process is different. In our case, the process is we need to, enter the values into a web form. So that piece of code will come here in this. So you not need to, create a new file here. You can work with here, or else if you have already created a sequence, make sure you call the sequence here using the invoke code and call the sequence over here. And if you see here, the values that it holds, sorry. So it holds the transaction item. As in the value from the queue that we're holding. So it holds a transaction item argument, and also it holds the config variable. If in case you want to fetch anything from the configuration file, you can also fetch the configuration file values from here using the in config arguments. Now that is all about the process.xaml files. Okay. Now let us talk about some of the other files that you can use from here. So the first file that we are going to use here is the set transaction status. Let me open this workflow. Now this set transaction status is responsible to set the status of your transaction item. Now the transaction item can be set either to success or a business exception or a system exception. So if you see here, let me head back here. You can see here, after the process transaction is done, you have three outcomes, either a success, either a business process, or either a system exception. So this is where you will set the transaction saying this is what is going to happen. Either it's going to be a success, either it's going to be a business exception, or either it's going to be a system exception. Now, if you let me open all of these individual sequences. So if you see the success workflow, so over here you are setting the success transaction. Over here you can see we are setting the success transaction as successful, and over here we are passing the transaction item variable. Now if I go back over here to the business exception that we are having, and over here you can see again, we are setting the transaction item as failed because it's a business exception. The queue did not perform correctly. Why should I put it as success? I'll mark it as fail. And then you're saying for this particular transaction item, mark that success. Now, see very carefully. Both of them, after setting the status, goes for the incrementing order. That transaction item is done. Now go and call the next transaction item. But if in case it's a system exception, and in the system exception, you can see we are setting the system type as application error, and obviously it's a failed error. And then over here, you can see we are calling the retry, and then over here we are taking some screenshots. I'll tell you what is this all application all about. Yeah. So this was all about the set transaction. Now let me talk about the retry current transaction item. Let me open this workflow for you. Now look at this workflow, a very beautiful workflow. So basically it manages the retrying mechanism for the framework. It involves the set transaction, it involves the maximum retry number, so everything has to be perfectly set over here. So if the transaction item, is a retry transaction item is greater than 0, then it's goes again and then retries, and if not, then it logs the message and saying everything is done. So let us stop this application and then proceed further. So the retry mechanism purely depends upon the setting that you have configured. Either you put the setting here in the Excel file, that is you set the number of retry, that is how many times you want that queue to be processed again. So it could be 1, 2, but say for example, if you put the maximum retry in the orchestrator queue, then what is going to happen is it's going to ignore this and it's going to take it from the orchestrator, the orchestrator maximum retry when you put the queue values over there. But say for example, there is no queues, right? If you're working with data tables, then in that case, you have to work with the Excel file because queues only work with orchestrator. Orchestrator cannot work with data tables. Okay, moving ahead, next we have the next workflow called as take screenshot. Now, if it's a system exception, obviously the code will pop up saying this is the error or the screen will have an error. So what we will do is for the developer to understand and to debug. So what we will do is we'll take a screenshot exactly when the error is occurring and we will store it in a folder. The folder name will be screenshot. So as you say, there is no screenshot folder created here. But the moment you encounter an exception or if there is an error which is occurring, at that point of time, the screenshot folder will be created, and inside that screenshot folder, the screenshot of the exception will be taken and it will be saved with the log messages, so that the next time the developer or you want to see where the exception happened, what was the exact exception that happened, you can open up the image and you can see this is where the exception happened and this is the exception error. A very beautiful mechanism to handle exceptions over here. Now after that we have close all application. Now the close all application, as the name suggests, okay, sorry, I think I lost my connection here. Okay. So the close all application, as I said, the name suggests, it is responsible to close all the applications that has been opened up. Let me open this workflow, and over here you can see there is nothing but just a log message saying closing application dot 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 dot. So what does this mean is, if you have a system exception, that means your program is going to end. Obviously we have a try catch mechanism, but in that case what we are going to do is we will close the application that might cause an error. Let's say for example the web page is not working fine, the web page is loading, or you want to start the web page again. So what we will do is we will close the web page, because if you see here, the system exception goes again to the initialization state, wherein it will start the web page again and then continue the process. So it's a very good advice to close all your application that is causing error. And obviously you're logging a message. So from the log message, you can see what exception, what application has been closed. So you close the application and system exception is gonna jump back to the first state, that is initialization state, and from there it is going to start the application again and then continue the workflow again from there. So that was all about the state. And even in the end process, if you open up and if you see, you have the same application, that is close all application, because end state also uses the same application, right? As in, it's like you are done with your automation, everything is completed. What you need to do now is you need to close your all your applications, so that now whatever resources we have opened up, those resources will be closed. You don't need to make open up the application and then move ahead, because that is not a best development practices. So the best development practices says that all the resources that you're opening up, make sure you at the end of the code you close all the resources, so that it does not occupy memory and you do a very clean programming over there. So it is basically, I see for you. I assume most of you would be very complex, as in what all states are there, but it's very easy when you get to know each and every state and each and every workflow that is responsible to do it. The more you understand them, and the more you become very expert in developing applications using an RE framework that we have here. Okay, so now speaking about that, these are all a brief idea about what is orchestrate, sorry, what is RE framework, and what things you can go ahead and do with the RE framework. So I'll just pause here for a couple of minutes, and I'm open to questions here. Please unmute yourself and ask questions, or if you feel comfortable typing a question in the chat box, I'll be happy to answer your questions in the chat box. Or if you have understood, so you can give me a thumbs up in the chat box, so that I can proceed further with the RE framework. Okay, so So I got a couple of confirmation on the chat box. Good. So let me give you a final brief overview about the entire RE framework together. So I'll just explain you in a nutshell what is RE framework, and post that we'll do an exercise where we'll do the same example. We did it for queue where we upload values to the queues, and we are filling the form. We'll use that application and we will try to implement it using the RE framework that we have. Okay. So let me proceed further. So you can see it's RE framework is basically a state machine diagram. So wherein the first state is the initialization state. Now in the initialization state, I'll be a little slow for you so that everybody can understand. So in the initialization state, the very first thing that you are going to do is you're going to read the values from the Excel sheet. That is the configuration file. Now the configuration file is available inside the data folder. So let me open the project directory for you guys. Okay, so this is the project directory, and in the project directory data, here is the configuration file. So all the values will be stored inside the configuration file. Now the configuration file has 3 worksheets. Obviously you can add more worksheet depending upon your complex process requirement, and you can even add it, alter your RE framework as per your need. So over here you have the settings, you have the constant values, and you have the asset values. In the setting values, you can put all the settings needed. You can add in your name and you can add your variables over here, and you can always give a description to make it much more meaningful, so that today you develop a code and tomorrow other person sees your code, he should be able to understand what is your code responsible for doing. In the constant values, you can add all the constant values that you need over here, and obviously in the asset values you can add assets, the asset value, the asset name, that you can take it from the orchestrator. Okay, that being said, now the first thing you can see over here is in the argument section. This is the path we're saying read your Excel file from here, and from the Excel file read only the 2 worksheet name, that is the setting worksheet and the constant worksheet. So over here they're using a for each loop to read the sheets. So first we'll read the settings, second we'll read the constants, and we'll put all the values inside the outconfig variable. After that, we're using a try catch activity to handle any exception that occurs. And over here, we are reading the asset configuration. So asset is read differently because it's not every time necessary to read the asset, but it's very necessary to read the setting and the constant. And in the asset, we are reading all the assets that we have, and we are using the get assets, and we are reading all the assets from the orchestrator. And if in case you don't have an asset, so you can mark your exceptions here saying no asset defined for the process. So you don't need to do it, everything is there in the framework. So make sure you choose the correct workflow and work with it. So we're done with the very first workflow, that is init all settings. Now okay, so let's proceed further. And then we have the kill all processes. As I said earlier, I have read all the configuration file. Everything is sorted. Now I need to start the process, my execution. Before that, I'll make sure that all the processes needed for me is closed, because I will open it from the starting. I don't want everything to be opened up because I don't know in what state they are. My selector would not be available for me. So I'll put all the code, that is kill all processes code here. Let's say for example, you're working with SAP application or you're working with your CRM. Many of you have raised a question as in we have our attendance CRM. So you first close your attendance CRM application here, so that you can start it from this workflow, that is initialize or init all application. So in the init all application, you will start your application from the start, as in a very fresh application will be opened up to you. So you open up your CRM application here, or you open up any other process application that you want to open up. All the code that is open application or open browser activities will come here in our case. So this is all about the initialization state. Now, if you see clearly over here, if the initialization state creates a system exception, and then you are not able to open up the application at all, or if there is some any other issues, the configuration file is a problem, the asset file is a problem, and in that we have raised a system exception. The system exception, what it will do is it will directly go and end the process. So it will not start itself because your initialization parameters are not fulfilled. If those are not fulfilled, how are you going to run the process? So in that case, you directly end your process. But if the state is successful, as in see, if you see here, let me open this. If you see here at the bottom, if the transaction is led to success, you go and open out the get transaction. If the transaction is set to fail, as in the if the system exception, then you go and call the end process over here. So this is where the end process. And let's now go ahead, assuming the transaction is successful, right? In our case, so we'll go ahead and we will open up the get transaction state. Let me open up the get transaction state for you. Now, let's see what is there in the first activity. The very first activity that we have is check stop signal, or it's basically stop signal. Now, what do you mean by that? As I said earlier, when you are running the code, the orchestrator status get changed. It's like it starts from pending, and when the actual automation starts, it goes to running. When the bot is running, you can stop the automation from the orchestrator itself. So in the orchestrator, you can say stop the automation. In between only, you can say stop the automation. So this is what the activity is responsible for doing. Let's say for example, you have 10,000 records from the queues that has to be running. So your process starts, and in between you are like, I need to stop it. I don't need to, continue it. So you can't start your process here because your process is running into your customer machine. But since you have the orchestrator access, a web portal access, you can log in into the portal, and from the portal you can stop the running job. You can say now you have to stop. So every time each and every queue item is fetched, it will first check the status. Did I got a stop signal from the orchestrator? If not, he'll proceed further. Now, let's say for example, a current queue transaction is in process, and that queue normally takes 1 minute for it to complete. And within that 1 minute, you said stop. The queue will complete itself, and when the framework goes for taking the next queue item, it has already got a message from the orchestrator saying, please stop the process. So it is going to stop the process. Now, if you see here, if the get queue, if the stop signal is from, if the orchestrator is responsible to say stop, then it comes to the true and it says stopping the process, and then it stops the transaction. If not, then it will the get transaction item. So in the get transaction item, what we are going to do is we are fetching the values from the queue. So the queue's value will be fetched. So the particular queue transaction will be fetched, and then it will be passed on for the processing. If not, then what happens is it will stop the process. Now it depends upon the queue status. If you get the transaction, it says I got a new transaction, go and call the process transaction. If there is no data itself in the queue, or if it's like stop process, if like the process is like stop process, as in the orchestrator says stop, then also in the case it goes for the end process. So over here, if you see, if it's no data present, it goes and stops the automation. If you get a new transaction over here, you go and call the process transaction state machine. Now let us see what is this process transaction responsible for and what do we have in it. As I said earlier, we have only one workflow. That is the process workflow. And that process workflow also is empty. Reason it is, why is it empty? Because it is your automation, you have to build it, right? So the logic, workflow, everything is going to be different. But they have given a template to us saying this is the process workflow that you have to use. Now over here there are two options that you can do is, see, ideally if you're working with a very small application, you can write your code directly here. You can add an activity and you can write code here. But if you're working with multiple application and it's a very complex application, so what you can do is you can create a new sequence and then you can invoke the sequence here, as in first call this sequence, then call this sequence, and so on and so on. Ideally the best practices is do not overcrowd your workflow. Or we say is, the moment you touch a different application, make a different workflow. Segregate it into as many workflows as possible because it is much more readable and much more understandable. The more code you write into a single process or a single workflow, it is going to be a problem for you to debug the code and then understand it. Yeah. Now, what do we do over here? As I said, build a workflow or build a new sequence and then call the sequences over here. Now, let us go ahead and look at the next state that is there. So ideally, it depends upon if it's a system exception that comes, if it's not a system exception that comes, or what kind of exception it is. So if it is system exception, as I said, it goes to the initialization block, correct? From where it's going to initialize all the application again, close all application, start the application from the start. That is how it is going to be executed. Now, what if it's a business exception? If it's a business exception, that means the process is fine. There is some data discrepancy in the data value. So what you need to do is you need to set it to fail and then go back to the get transaction state here. And if it is a success, that means everything is fine. Then again go back to the get transaction data, fetch a new Q value, and then start processing the values from there. And the end process is basically, if there is no transaction, go to the end process. So this is all about, RE framework. So you need to understand what are the code that you have, what are the workflows that you have, what is the actual use of the workflow, what are the variables that you have, how to use all the workflows that you have, and so on. Now, as we have only built the RE framework, so every time you start an RE framework, so we also have the documentation for it. So under the documentation tab over here, you can see this is the documentation that has been created for you. So let me open up this documentation, and there you go. So this is the documentation that comes with the code itself. So basically it's like it tells you about what is RE framework, how to work with RE framework, and it gives you an in-depth detail about each and every file that you have, each and every variable that you have, each and every workflow that you have. So you can see over here, see over here, all the variables are explained very, in minute detail. All the workflows are explained in very minute detail. What is that workflow responsible to do? And apart from that, it has all the arguments and variables created, as in what are they responsible to do and how can you even change them. We even have a value where you can, change them to some other things, as in it's like changing from queue item to data table item. Those things also can be, is mentioned in this documentation. So feel free to, read this documentation because it's a one place go where everything about RE framework is, combined into this documentation, and you can read it and you can understand more from this documentation. Now, let me quickly show you an example that we have built on the RE framework. Okay, where's the UiPath Studio? Okay, so there you go. So over here, as I said earlier, so what we are going to do is, as we saw now that we have used this Google form where we are inputting all the values into the Google form, reading from an queue item. So we will use this same application here, and what we will do is we will use it in an RE framework. As in, we will embed this inside a RE framework. So I'll tell you how simple it is. So so ideally, since you are learning it for the first time, so how you are responsible to do it, so it's like you first build a workflow, because this is how my faculties, or even when I started doing it, how I did it. So it's like you build all your workflows without RE framework. The same way you will build it. So you will build multiple workflows, you will run all your automations, each and everything. You do it in that way when you start, ideally. And then what you do is you take one workflows and you put it inside the RE framework, and then you will understand how exactly it works. So then after a while, if you get comfortable with it, then you can directly open the RE framework and you can start working with the RE framework itself. So over here, we have a very basic code written to you. I'll tell you what exactly we have done over here. So let me open the initialization file over here. So in the init all settings, as you can see, so over here we are reading the values from the config file. Let me open the config file for you. Here is the config file. Okay, let me close the Excel file and open it again. There you go. So here is the config file, and let me change the queue name to something else. Okay, so say for example, I will call this as ref form data. That makes sense. So my queue name is ref form data. So this is the value that I have updated in the config file. So in the config file, I'm saying the queue name is ref form data, and there's nothing much. I don't need anything else as of now, because we started. There's no need for asset because we're not doing any manipulation. So this is done. Let me close this, and all the setting is done. You don't need to do anything here because we're not doing anything. And even in the kill application, we're not killing any application because we're just opening a web form, which we will open it on our own. Now let's come to this part where this is initialize or init all application. Over here, if you see carefully, here I'm using an open browser activity. In this open browser activity, I am opening this website, that is this form. If I do this in the get transaction state, so what will happen is each and every time, that is for each and every queue record, it will open up the website for me every time. And then for every value in the queue, it will fill the next value in the queue. It will again open up the website, and then it will fill it then again, and so on and so on. But to avoid that, what we are doing is in the init all application itself, I'm saying just open that website. That website will be opened up in that way. Now let's proceed further. Let's come back over here, and then in the get transaction item. Now over here in the get transaction item, if you see here what values that we have over here. So obviously we are checking if we are sending a stop transactions from the orchestrator, that all is done. Let me open this workflow, that is the get transaction workflow. Now over here we are calling the orchestrator queue item from the Excel sheet that we have specified. So those values will be taken inside the orchestrator variable, that is the queue item, that is the in config variable, and then those values from the in config will be passed on to the out transaction item. So now we have to use this into our next state. That is, if we have data, we go ahead and call the process transaction state. In this state, we are going to have only one workflow as discussed earlier, the process.xaml file. I'll open this workflow. And over here, you can see I have my code written over here. So in this code, you can see I just have appended one thing to you. So the first thing is, obviously we are gonna, attach the browser that we have already opened up. So I'll just use indicate on again, well, this is the browser that we're going to use it. And then next thing that we need to do is we need to type into all these pages over here. So till now I've done only one thing. I'll do it for all the values that we have. But this is for your understanding. This is the code that we are doing it over here. So this is done. So now let's come back again. If all the transactions done, then depending upon the exception that is thrown, those path will be taken. If an error, it goes to the initialization state, or if it's a success or a business exception, it goes ahead and takes the next value from the transaction queue. Now, I have built another workflow over here. So this I'll be just running this individually. This is just for putting the values into the orchestrator queue, nothing else. So same reading from the same sheet and putting into the orchestrator queue. Now, this is one of the very cool activity. The activity name is bulk add queue activity. So if you search for queue activities, okay, so this is the project directory, sorry. Let me open the activities tab. Yeah. So if you search for queue activities, if you remember last time we used add queue item, but this time we'll use add bulk queue item. Now add bulk queue item, as you say, it is responsible to insert the data table directly into the queue. You may not need to specify one item at a time. You can directly put the entire data table into the queue as it is by using the add bulk queue item. So I explicitly did not show this when we were doing queue because in the RE framework, I'll tell you how to do it. Over here, all you need to do is you need to mention, where you are going to store that. So what is the name that we have given over here? It says form data. Is it the same queue name over here? Yes. So just for simplicity, I'll just copy this again and I'll paste in the Excel sheet so that we're not missing any casing over here. Okay, and let me save this. Fine. So this is the queue in which we will insert all the values from the Excel sheet. So let us go to the orchestrator portal. Okay, so this has logged me out. Let me log in again. And in the orchestrator portal, we will add the values into it. Okay. So let's go ahead under the queues. Let me create a new queue. So the queue name is ref form data and the queue is created. So there is no data into the queue. Let us verify by clicking on the vertical ellipsis and the view transaction. Okay. So since we just created a new queue, there is no data into the queue. Now first, let us go ahead and add data into the queue. Awesome. So let me check if everything is fine. Form DT, is this the name form DT? Yes. Okay. So let me run this individual file. I'll say run file. Okay, so let us wait for the bot. So the bot has started up and I think so it has executed successfully. Let me do a quick refresh here. And now you can see all the 10 data has been added over here. So instead of doing individually one item at a time, we are putting all the values bulk at one go. But then you'll have to also be sure that, there's a difference between them. If you remember last time when we added a value, we specified our argument name by ourselves. So first name, so we wrote F as small and there was no spacing in it. But this time it will follow the column name in the Excel sheet. So when you call them, you have to call it with the particular name. That is the first F capital space name. So this is the name that you're going to reference and call the particular queue item. Okay, so the queue has been added. Now the next thing is we need to run the code. Okay, so let us run the code over here. Okay. So now over here, let us head back to the process. And from here, we need to do all this data manipulation, as in writing into the code and everything. So we have done only one type into first name. Let us do the type into for all the other fields that we have. So let me go ahead and do a type into activity. I'll drag and drop the type into activity, and we have to do it for the last name. There you go. So let me just copy this and I'll paste it over here. So I'll tell you what exactly we are going to paste it over here. So since the transaction, okay, sorry. So we're going to use the transaction argument. So the transaction argument in our case is in underscore transaction, and the same thing dot specific content. And here you need to specify the name. In our case, the name in the queue is last name, and we're converting into a toString. And we'll click on OK. So this is last name is done. Let's use and another type into activity, and we'll make sure we'll do simulate click on everything. And over here, we'll do it for the company name. Okay. So the same thing, I'll paste it here, and this is going to be the company name. Or so that we don't miss anything, let me quickly open the Excel file itself so that we can copy the value from the Excel file itself, so that we don't miss any casing from here. So company name, let me copy this name and paste it here. Sorry, there you go. Perfect. Now after the company name, we need to do it for the role in the company. So I'll use another type into activity for it. There you go. And this is for the role in the company. And let me copy this transaction item dot specific content, and I'll use the name over here, that is role in the company. There you go. Let me specify the name particularly over here. Awesome. Now what do we have next? We have address, email, and phone number. Let us go ahead and do that. Drag and drop. This is going to work for address. We'll use the same value, that is transaction item dot specific content again, and let me copy the name from the Excel sheet. Address. Perfect. There you go. Let me paste it over here. I hope this is making sense to each and everyone. Let us go ahead and do the next. So the next item that we have in our list is email. So we'll indicate where I need to type over here in the email. So there you go. And let me copy the name from here in the Excel sheet, and let us paste it over here. That is the email section. Awesome. Now we have only one field left, that is the phone number. So let us go ahead and indicate the phone number. And let us use the same transaction item dot specific content, and let us copy the phone number from the Excel sheet over here. Awesome. So there you go. Perfect. Now the only thing left over here is I have to do some submit buttons over here. So I'll just pass some random values here, and let me add a click activity for submit, and let me submit this, and let me add another click activity which says submit another response. Okay, things on our side looks absolutely fine. So we have done everything perfectly fine. Let us verify again, is everything in place? So let me open up the initialization file. So in the initialization file, we'll make sure that we are opening up the website. So yes, here you go. The website is opened up, and we are fetching the transaction item. Everything is fine over there. And in the process transaction, we will call the process.xaml file, And in the process.xaml file over here, we have specified each and every record perfectly fine. Okay, so now is the moment of truth. Let me close this browser and let me minimize everything. Let me open up the studio again and let me run from the starting. That is start of the code. Okay, there you go. Okay, so there was no validation error. So the bot is gonna start, and there you go. And there you go. So the values has been fetched from the orchestrator queue. So all the values has been typed here. So now what I'll do is let two values, get completed from here. And then what I'll do is I'll close this application and then I'll stop this browser by myself. There you go. If I close the browser, what is happening over here? See, this is going to start again on its own and it is continuing from that. Now let me close this again from here. So I'll say leave this application. There you go. Now if you see in the studio, before the studio opens, this is again starting up. You can see this is how the RE framework is so robust that even if your application is closed, it again, that means a system exception. It goes back to the initialization state, correct? And from that initialization state, it again comes down and then it processes all the values over here. So even if your application fails or whatever happens, or you by yourself close your application, that we saw in my case, I completely stopped the Internet Explorer. But then again, it goes back to the initialization state, again opens up the application and again, does all your job. So this is how your RE framework is, so robust that, whatever happens, the framework is, going to handle everything. Let me close it again. There you go. See, now it has started again, doing the values every time. So this is all about the RE framework, and now it has stopped. So you can see over here the errors. You can see all the transaction here. So you can see over here, it got exceptions here. We stopped here, it got exception, and you can see the screenshot also has been taken up. And see over here, see, let us start from starting, right? So because it's killing the process, opening the application, transaction started, and you remember the transaction number that I said. So it's first transaction, second transaction, and in the third transaction, if you remember, I stopped the application. So it says transaction occurred. Here is the exception, and it took a screenshot and store it into a variable. I'll open that screenshot as variable. And then see closing application, where it's like when you start, you close everything, then opening the application again, and then transaction started and so on and so on. So each and everything has been updated in the logs perfectly over here. So if let me do a refresh in the exception folder. See, this is all the screenshot taken. Let me open up the project directory. Let me open up the exception, and here you can see this is all the exception screenshot that has been taken up, as in this is where the exception occurred, this is where the exception happened, and so on and so on. Clear? So I hope this this is very information session about RE framework. And before RE framework, we talked about orchestrator. So orchestrator is the heart of UiPath. For us, it's like the heart. Without orchestrator, there is no way to control your robots. And RE framework is just an framework which helps to solve a complex business problem. So initially, for people when you start with UiPath, so initially you first do a lot of hands-on programming using a simple sequence and sequence workflow, flow chart and all. Move to orchestrator, talk about orchestrator, speak about orchestrator, and then do orchestrator programming, understand all the features of orchestrator, right from queues, assets, triggers, and then how to connect your robot to the orchestrator, how to publish your robot to the orchestrator. And then once you're comfortable everything, please come to the UiPath RE framework. And in the RE framework, you first understand what all the states are. You have the documentation, right? Open up the documentation, read from the documentation what all the things are there in the documentation, and then after that try to implement code one time at a time. And once you get comfortable, then you can build any complex project. So be it your college CRM application, right now most of my faculty is working in colleges, universities. They are automating end-to-end process, as in from the start, as in when the admission process starts. So that process has been automated. So the student fills up the form and then assign everything is assigned, I think, from till the time it is graduated. So all the records is pulled from the board does the everything. It maintains the record, it maintains the spreadsheet, it insert values into the application, and then finally it puts grading. Everything has been controlled by the bot. So I hope all of you who are attending this session I would have learned a lot about UiPath from me and all the other faculties that you have joined. They would have, so those previously all the faculties that I've taken, so those are also a part of the UiPath, where they have taken training under the UiPath. So I hope you would have learned a lot about UiPath and how to use it. So if you have any doubt, especially about UiPath and whatever things that you have in UiPath, so we have a website for it. So the website is called as forum.uipath.com. So let me just open that website itself. There you go. So the website name is forum.uipath.com. So forum.uipath.com is basically like if you guys are familiar with Stack Overflow, so this is the Stack Overflow for UiPath. So we have built our own forum, so you don't need to go outside any other world. Everything is present within UiPath itself. So in this UiPath forum, you can ask questions about, so including me, we have the entire plethora of the developers around working with UiPath. So it's not only me working at UiPath is a part of forum. All the people who is working with UiPath are a part of the forum. So you post a question here, you will obviously get your answers in the forum itself. Before posting a query, I would suggest do not duplicate your questions. You can search your questions from here, and if you get a solution for it, please use that solution. If in case there is no question raised for for the doubt you have, please feel to raise a question, and people, including me, other people will be able to solve your problems in the UiPath forum itself. Yeah. So this is all about the session that we have for the day. So let me know in the chat box if you guys have any queries or any questions about it. I'll be able to help you out to address the queries and solve your issues. So I'll be here for a couple of minutes. So I'll suggest, if you have any doubt, so please let me know what is the doubt or something. So I'll be able to, address it to all of you. So you can unmute yourself and you can speak. So that I can address your queries for that. Okay, so let me see the chat box. So we have no questions in chat box. So I hope this session was very informative to all of you. So thank you, Rohit, for your valuable feedback. So as I said, the UiPath forum is completely available. Please feel free to ask questions in the UiPath forum. So we will help you out to go ahead. And apart from that, I would also like you to enroll to our web academy. So we have our own academy called, the website name is academy.uipath.com. So if in case you want to learn something from there, so it's a free MOOC platform. So you can log in into the website and you can also study from there. So it's absolutely free to study from the website. Okay, so that is all from my side. So
Okay.
is the host there?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Niyas, for such an
Thank you so
informative
much.
session and covering such a means complex topic in such a simple manner. I think all participants must understand it and able to implement it in their organizations. So thank you so much, Nia, again on behalf of NILET Gorakhpur also.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, thank you so much, Aline. So it was a pleasure for me, to take a session for NST Universities. So any help needed, we are always there for you. So all of you can, contact us. So we'll be happy to help you again for this same thing.
thank you.
Okay.
So
Okay.
now, thanks to all participants also for being so patient. And I think they must get a lot from this FTP on RPA. And the other information is related to your final assessment test, which will be available to you guys from 2 to 5. Okay, and all details have been already shared by the Deepam Dubey sir. So the test will be of 30 minutes and it will contain total 30 questions. Sorry, 25 questions, and there will be no negative marking. Okay, so be ready for test and good luck. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Bye bye, everyone. All the best for your test.